And I was like, hey dad, I just got diagnosed with ADHD. So his concern is, but your market value in the arranged marriage Indian ecosystem will go down. And I'm like, Dad, I have bigger fish to fry.
Dude, he's got an agenda. Hi, I'm Aiken, and there are two things that I love: good food and meeting new people. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to be hosting a dinner with strangers who might experience life just a little bit differently. So, we are having vegetarian food from Element. You all tried before?
Yes.
Yes?
Oh wow, really? No, I haven't actually.
It's really good. Yeah, please everyone start, let's dig in. This is for sharing. I think we got like churros, rojak, and like Element makes all these like very interesting vegetarian dishes. Yeah. So we can dig in and then we'll talk as we go. Yeah. What are you guys having?
I have the risotto with mushrooms.
Nice. And you guys are having sushi and
Sushi. And tofu.
I think we are all here sort of because we are going to have a conversation about ADHD. So either we ourselves have been diagnosed, or we know somebody or are close to somebody who has been diagnosed with ADHD. My first question is, how did you guys hear about ADHD, and maybe how did you feel like you or your loved one have it? Yeah, it's free for all.
Nigel, I think you have a good story to say. Like, I think you can start.
Straight away. Who has ADHD? No, I'm kidding.
I got diagnosed at 33 as an adult, and didn't realize I had ADHD because I fit in, I guess. Rather you go through the Singapore system and you're like, I look like everyone else. Why am I shouldn't be too different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so COVID happened, and then suddenly all the ways I used to cope to, I guess, mask the symptoms just didn't exist anymore. And then suddenly you're like, oh, why is this happening? And then my wife was reading an article about neurodivergence because we thought our son has ADHD. And then she's like, this is you actually.
Oh.
Like just sitting there feeling called out, this is you do this, you do that. And
Oh.
like, that's true. Huh, so what do I do about that?
Interesting. And sorry, do you mind sharing some of the things that she read that it went like, oh, that's me?
So I think it was the hyper focus, is the constant flitting about, trying different things, doing too many things at one time, taking on your plate more than you can chew kind of thing sometimes, and then the very extreme mood swings or withdrawals as well. Yeah, and just I guess fundamentally we just always say, you're so different. Why are you so different? And I was like, oh, I think I know why you're different. Yeah, I don't know if you guys found that.
Yeah.
I got diagnosed this year, so in May or end of April. So I work in tech in a startup, so it's a lot of repeated work, and I felt like whenever there was repeated work, I get bored. To get excitement, I would either gamble on 0-day expiry stock options. I'm not even kidding. Right. Earning season was my time to shine. Yeah. I was like, I'm going to look at my IBK. I was like, okay, I'm gonna bet this. It's gonna go up 20%. And it's kind of fun because it's like that adrenaline, that thrill would get me to get my work done. And I even remember I was talking to Rachel once, and I was like, if you think that I'm not hearing you, it's not that I'm not hearing you, but I'm looking at my phone, reading TechCrunch so that I can hear you better.
Interesting.
So I had to do multiple things at once to concentrate on one source of news. If it's very not exciting enough for me. Hey, my name is Sudharin Ramen, but people call me Ramen because the noodles. So I am a 31-year-old startup founder. ADHD is a very recent phenomenon in my life, to give or take, because I got diagnosed early this year. So I was in a ripe age of 30 when I decided to go to a psychiatrist to get diagnosed. And it's close to my heart because it finally helped me figure a huge part about myself out. I always felt like something was missing, and I always loved repeating this sentence. I stole it from a book, so please use it to your own needs. That something was missing, and I didn't know what it was, but I was feeling the missingness of the missing. And ADHD and the diagnosis with that helped me find that out. And yeah, it's been, I'm 6 months old because now it's a new life for me with ADHD. So my co-founder told me that, hey, why don't you check, do you have ADHD? You have symptoms about it. Okay. At the same time, we hired someone who was diagnosed with ADHD. So it was sort of everyone around me was talking about it. So one day I just went, you know what, I'm gonna talk to a psychiatrist. Yeah. Most likely, it's something else. I just need melatonin and go to sleep. Went there and they're like, yes, you have this weirdness in you, which is your superpower but also a curse. Let's figure this out together.
So we've really got two people who sort of like were helped to this knowledge, right, by somebody else. Yeah, interesting.
I'm new to the ADHD world as well. I was diagnosed 2 weeks before my 30th in June. And the catalyst that led to that happening was actually a conversation with Raman and his flatmate, Jerry. And Raman was sharing about how like he was like newly diagnosed and oh my gosh, this big revelation and everything. And then I just kept saying like, oh my gosh, that sounds like me, haha, how funny, how funny. And then at some point, I think it was Sherry who was just like, Rachel, like I know we're joking and all, but maybe there's like something like worth looking into here. And and I was just like, oh, okay. When I got tested, it was like, whoa, okay, this is like a whole thing. So the past couple of months have been this very like mind-blowing and strange new lens to kind of understand me, and also to let other people understand a bit better as well. My name is Rachel. I am 30 and work in communications with startups as well as VCs. And outside of work, I am very obsessed with dogs and spend time at the shelter with Singapore Specials. Discovering ADHD gave me a way to understand the world and to also translate it to the people around me. It was funny, I was talking to my boyfriend yesterday and I was just like, what was like the most surprising thing since I got diagnosed? And he was just like, nothing. I had no idea that like ADHD could look like me. Like when in primary school, I remember like little boys with ADHD and having timeouts and everything. I didn't know it could look like a little girl daydreaming in the corner who was terrible at math.
Interesting. Now it's making me consider if I should go for a test. But anyway, yes.
Okay, so I probably it has a different story from the rest. My son was diagnosed with ADHD, so I've got 3 boys. And the middle one, he's already 20, but at 6 years old, he was diagnosed with ADHD. It sort of came a little bit coincidentally almost, because I was actually concerned that he wasn't picking up reading. So I was also away, similar to Rachel, in Australia in their early childhood, because my husband was studying. And the psychologist sort of made this very passing remark, like, because he was moving around the whole room, and he's like quite hyper. And she said, a lot of them are also ADHD, do you want to test, And I was just really like, oh, how much? And like, okay, like by the way, right? Like, so by the way.
Yeah.
And then ended up he's both. He's mildly dyslexic, but his ADHD was actually quite concerning. Like it was a hyperactive, impulsive, combined type kind of thing. Studied psychology, I'm a social worker. So I heard of it before, but even then, I think I still had misconceptions about it, like similar to what you were saying. Like, it's not me, right? Like, it's not my child. Although, of course, he was all over the place, but because he was number 2, I sort of also blamed myself, thinking, okay, maybe I was just really busy and, always a bit more permissive, with number 2, right? So I just thought to myself, I'll be stricter. I think things will be fine. Obviously, they were not fine. So then I had to go on this whole journey of finding out what is ADHD. My name is Tina. I am a mother of 3 boys. They are 21, 20 and 15 years old. I've been a stay-home mum for many, many years, but very active in the community. I do freelance parent training as well as educator training and workshops and stuff like that related to the area of ADHD. ADHD is a very highly misunderstood condition compared to even things like autism. Because for autism, people sort of think like, oh wow, that's something we really don't know, so I better go and find out, right? But ADHD has a huge misconception over it, because all the behaviors of ADHD look like naughtiness and ill discipline and poor parenting. Not everyone fits the usual naughty child bill. I think there needs to be greater compassion around ADHD.
Again, maybe from a layman perspective, the only impression that I understand about ADHD is that disruptive boy in class. It seems to not be the case around this table. So how has it shown up in your life? Like, what are the things that you go like, oh, this was normal to me all along, and then I realized, oh, it's not normal at all, because that's all the ADHD I know, which is the disruptive student. Yeah.
I didn't know adults could have ADHD.
Ah, okay.
I thought
That's a good
ADHD was
point.
Yeah,
something.
you grow out of it, right?
Yeah, you grow out of it. So like, it was when Raman told me he was diagnosed. I was like, that's just such a wild concept. Like, I can have like 3 tracks of conversation in my head at like one time, and I can like follow every single one, which helps with the work that I do, because in PR and comms and managing different clients, like, you need that. So because it was like, I guess, celebrated in my professional life,
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah, it's different.
There are memories so vivid that I know exactly what happened, why it happened, because there was a strong emotion associated within me.
Okay.
Like my first breakup, where it happened, how long I cried. I still remember all of that. And the second, third, fourth, fifth. but jokes aside, there was also like, there's this thing where it's like a problem is very hard to solve is kind of very exciting. Like being in a pressure
Yes.
cooker and just solving this for like 16 hours straight, because you can't move without solving that. I can't sleep if I'm not solving a problem.
Wow.
And it's insane, right? And it's like, it can be something I have never learned in my life, right? But like, I did metallurgy, and it's a field of like making alloys. And I used to like, I had no background in that.
Yeah.
I was a researcher in that field, and I was like, this idea will work. And everyone said no, right? So my goal was to prove them wrong. So I went to the lab 1 week, did all my experiments, and like, this is the whole case study.
Yeah.
This is either gonna give me a Nobel Prize or no. That's pretty much like what my thinking process was.
Yeah.
And I couldn't explain it to people. I just did it and I showed it, and it actually worked. And we published papers, and I got bored of science, so I quit. That's how it works.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's been quite. There are a lot of upsides to this as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Nigel, any upsides for yourself?
I don't know if it's an upside or not, but it just makes you want to try things that you think are hard,
Yes.
right? Which is also, it's good fun. I wonder if upside downside are really the best way to frame it.
Yeah.
It's one way to frame it. It's useful when you can apply it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I guess one other big aspect also is just being able to noticing a lot of things around you in the periphery as well. When it comes to social interactions, for example, knowing that people are constantly, like, the micro reactions are happening. This is something that I'm saying. Should I be changing it? So you maybe become a bit more attuned to that sometimes.
Yeah.
I think definitely those with ADHD have very different brains, like very different way of interacting and perceiving the world. Yeah. So I think with good environments, and also somehow like personal tenacity and ability to just like pick up and make something of yourselves, you all have come so far, and I think that's definitely something that says a lot about your personal strengths as well. So it's why those who don't seem impaired don't get diagnosed, but actually more have it,
Right.
and I'm going to say something, but I hope it doesn't like shock you or rock your boat, but it's sort of been to that point of saying like, yeah, maybe you could have been a rocket scientist or, work at NASA or be like Elon Musk, and but you are still this great tech startup, founder and everything, right? So who's going to say like you did anything less than your potential? You know what I mean? So that's the difference in the definition of impairment, which I think we're learning to challenge. Like, is the child really reaching his potential? And actually, the only person that knows is the person, the child, or at that point, or the teenager, or the adult. Which then I guess had led you all to go for the diagnosis, because you're sort of thinking, yeah, I may have made it, but then inside me, I'm thinking, what more, right? Could I have possibly achieved if actually I knew I had maybe some areas or deficits that I could have then better managed, like even failed relationships, right? Or like people not knowing you and not like rooting for you at the time where you're like, hey, hello, like this is me, right? Like imagine if you had a girlfriend and you went to the 18th hour, or maybe you could have lost her just because you were trying to be a Nobel Prize winner and get your alloys and all of that formula correct, right? But then, I mean, you would need someone to just come and cheer for you and go, wow, like okay, go for it, right? But then like, whatever. So I'm just bringing you as
but
an
it is
illustration.
true. It's very.
It wasn't his story,
Yeah.
by the way.
But very similar, very
Yeah.
similar. It is a thing which affects personal life as well.
Yeah.
Because the hyper focus. My last partner, we ended up breaking up because we were fundraising, things were hard, and so the way I dealt with that was I went into a shell, didn't share anything, put a wall between me and her, and would just work 16-hour days. and hope that I will solve this in the next 4 days, right? And I'll never solve it in the next 4 days because it's outside of my control. And she would see me, like one day absolutely in love with her, the other day not respond, not text. And it's not, I'm not doing this purposely. It's just that my brain doesn't think that this is important enough for me to respond to her right now because a company's dying or something else is happening, right? Also, emotional dysregulation, no one talks about it a lot.
Yes.
It's just like when you're happy, you're so happy that the world, like you can listen to music, you can see colors, the world is beautiful, right? Like whenever there was like a Bollywood movie where people describe love, I actually felt that. I could never not feel that love in my life, right? So when there was no connection like that with someone, even if I'm going on a first or second date, I will not date that person. And whenever I ended up being in a relationship, like love at first sight is like, you know, like insane emotions, like you know, the whole butterflies in the stomach, that always happens. So that's, but then when things are hard, like it's, goes way down, like you're in a very dark place.
Yep.
So I'm 31 now, so it's like maybe I was like depressed for a while. That was what like my earlier thinking was, because it's the highs are so high but the lows like cripple you, like you can't move emotionally, right?
Yeah.
That's how bad it is. Definitely affects relationships with people.
It sometimes felt lonely with the whole emotional dysregulation stuff, because when I was really happy and excited and like being the life of like everything, it was like okay, but when it was low, I just kind of felt lonely. Like nobody got it. I couldn't understand like why it was that big of a spectrum, and it always felt like growing up, people were just like, oh, Rachel's very emotional, but there was something behind that, and I didn't have the language to explain it, and I always feel like, what if I did? Like I feel like that could have change things, but I'll never know, I guess.
Yeah. And a big thing that women with ADHD do is masking.
Yes.
Right? So after a while, you mask all that negative part, or the part that the world doesn't want to see, the deeper, darker emotions, and only play out on the brighter ones.
Yes.
Right? So you mask it because like, well, they're not going to, or in fact, they may misread me, right? So yeah.
I always felt like I had to play up the happy side, and it always felt like people only want this version of me, and it was very hard to let people into the other side of it, I think.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Absolutely. I mean, you guys were diagnosed maybe a bit later, but how was it growing up in the school system? Now looking back, did you experience any difficulties?
People think the worst thing that can happen with ADHD is that you get distracted. Actually, I feel like the worst thing that can happen is it sometimes hits your self-esteem. Like, the hard things can be easier, but why are the easy things so hard? Like the executive dysfunction stuff, and like I could never keep like my diary in check, always getting in trouble in school for that. And it's just like, why did that have to be so difficult? And you feel like a lesser than, but you don't have any explanation to understand why. My mom always reminds me, I used to come home from school crying, and I would say like, Mom, I tried so hard, but I just can't understand. And my mom, having the foresight that she did, she wasn't quite academic in school as well, and my family had an opportunity to move to Australia. So I grew up there, and thankfully, I didn't feel pressure to be too academic growing up.
And school was tough. I mean, I did the whole O-levels, A-levels, and keep falling asleep. If you like the teacher, it's very interest-based as well, right? So if you're not interested, you don't care for it at all. You reject it with a fury that doesn't make any rational sense.
Like, I hate you as a teacher and I hate you as a subject.
Yes.
But the next year, another teacher can come and teach us the
Love it.
subject.
Love it.
And you can love it. You're like,
Absolutely.
you're the best at it. Like,
You fit between things like that. Yeah. If you like it, fantastic. It helps you a lot. But I guess it presents differently for everybody. And if you're lucky, it hits really well.
Yeah.
For good or bad, like I was pretty okay, above average without having to study, right? So I never had to study. My brain can wander wherever it wanted, and I will just go give the exam. Won't be great, it'll be like B+ or B-, right? Like that's the range. I'll always be there. So from the get-go in my life, they were like, you have so much potential, you're not living up to it. You know, that's a constant thing I heard for like, you know, through my whole life. So that the whole potential bullshit like just like pisses me off. And so I used to get very angry, right?
Yeah.
But then that anger also manifested weird ways. I was like, I'm not gonna study before the examination, but I'm still going to score an A. Like that's how I had, did my, in India you had 10th grade, right? So you have 10th grade public examination. I scored 90% and I never studied. Because I remembered enough from the classroom, enough from revisions to be like, I can do this. But then in 12th grade, I had worse teachers. So nothing sank in my head. So I failed every subject, every month, every exam, till high school.
Interest point thing that we were talking about just now. Okay.
So grades, and even since then, grades have always been like, if I love the subject, I'm the best at it. If I don't like the subject, I barely pass. But then I'll come back to that subject without the teacher, without the pressure of the exam, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Now let me go and research about this for like 8 hours straight.
Yeah, that's completely fair because like I was super into like art and theater and all the creative stuff in school, and I completely failed like science and the math side of things. Like I never got above 30% for a science test.
Yeah.
But with the work I do now, I spend so much time with like deep tech founders and PhDs and like the spectrum of like sustainability to crypto to like space tech feels completely accessible to me, and it's all like interest level and people.
Wow.
I cannot explain
Yeah.
like how else I learned.
Interesting.
Well, for me, my diagnosis was prompted because of COVID, and COVID was really hard because a lot of the usual coping mechanisms I used to mask or kind of deal with ADHD just couldn't exist anymore, which means that you're left with that feeling of inadequacy, of that feeling of rejection, of that feeling of just despondency. I'd say I never got tested, but I probably was clinically depressed at a point in time. I have 2 kids, one's 7 years old, one's 3 years old. At a point in time, my wife was just like, why are you taking it out on us? I'm like, where do I go, right? I'm kind of stuck at home in COVID as well. And so parenting is really tough because then all the stuff that you want to do and cope with ADHD cannot be done. You need more time to be a parent. You need more time to do these things. It gets really tough to have to not know why, I guess from my wife's perspective, why is he suddenly so different? What happened in the span of a year? Yeah, so I guess that really puts a strain on relationships. And like Ramen said, having the language to put it together and say, this is why you're not the same. And that becomes so liberating to say, it's actually, it is my fault in some sense, but it's not really my fault, so it makes sense. Yeah.
Can empathize on maybe a different level, but like just maybe when someone gives you that language or that empathy, I'm sure it must feel like a big relief. How is life like after the diagnosis? What was the liberation that it gave you?
So I think one of the big things that it impacted was my relationship with my boyfriend, because all the stuff that we used to, I guess, sometimes have tension over, like for the first time it felt like we were on the same team.
Wow.
Rachel is ignoring the thing that I asked her to do because she doesn't care about what this means to me. It's Rachel forgot and ADHD did a thing.
It's not me against you, it's us against this.
That's so powerful. Wow. Yeah.
I really like what you're saying because I think that whole idea that you finally have something almost to blame, like just now, and I just said I did something wrong, but not quite, right? So it's almost, it's true because you didn't do anything wrong to be ADHD. Like you have ADHD. It's one of those things like you have an allergy, right? No one's going to scold someone who has an allergy. So I think it's that awareness that can be so liberating, where you finally have something to sort of blame in a healthy way. I mean, like, okay, it's this, right? Like your boyfriend saying, it's her ADHD, right? Like she just wired differently. She's not going to sort of prioritize that at this moment when I ask her like to do that thing, instead of having all that squabble, right? It's more like, oh, it's okay, chill, she can't like just like, oh, she can't eat that thing, she's allergic, right? Like, I think the acceptance level personally goes through the roof, and I really say this because of the work that I do as well. I keep sharing with parents, that
actually knowing liberates you so much more.
Yeah.
Because a lot of parents, they may know, so they do the diagnosis earlier, but then they don't want to reveal it to the child. And they keep saying that it would devastate the child.
But I told them, you know that actually they are going to label themselves with all the other not so good names, like I'm lousy, I'm lazy, I'm not good enough, or I haven't reached my potential, or whatever, right? It's my fault, and I did something wrong, and I'm doing something wrong again. and I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, and I don't know how to not do that thing, that it's all me. And that's where they spiral down into all the co-occurring mental health struggles like depression and all the dark places that you all talk about. And my son went there too, you know, because he's always like that. Like, I try so hard and, you know, it just doesn't work, right? And he'll say, I'm really dumb, Mom. I'm not that clever, you know, like that kind of thing. And I'm like, no, you know, so in as much as you did say, you know, having good environment, sometimes it's their own like internal demons, you know. Like he has to talk himself out of that point. And you talked about low self-esteem. It's so resonate, where he's like, no one can tell him he's good enough if he's always keeps putting himself down, right? And he's had to crawl, you know, out of that bit by bit. It's not easy, you know. I think, you might relate to that.
The worst critic in the world is you. Yes. And like I was saying this, like you know, one of our employees made a mistake, and I was just like, you know, giving him like, this is a place we can all fail and so on. But why don't I give myself the same kind of like
come on,
ability, right?
That's really good.
And it sounds trivial. So I think when I got diagnosed with ADHD, the first thing the doctor said to me, right, it's like, you know, I'm 30, you know, I publish papers which are like very well cited, you know, like according to on paper, success story, right? Internally, I was a mess, right? I was like, everything felt like slipping away from my hands. So when I got the diagnosis, I sat there and the doctor was like, just FYI, it's not your fault. And he just said that and I cried. Like I just couldn't stop crying because I was like, I finally could piece it together, right? So, you know, I had my whole revelation and I talked to my best friends about it. Some understood, some didn't, you know, like, but it was fine because I finally could piece my life together now. And I feel like I could work from this, like, it's day zero, you know, like, I say that I'm like 6 months old because I just got diagnosed with ADHD in like, in May, because the whole way I built my life was not sustainable. So I had to like relearn a lot of things. So I had my call with my parents, and I still remember I was sitting at the WeWork, and I was talking to my dad, and I was like, "Hey, Dad, I just got diagnosed with ADHD, and I got meds for 2 weeks to see what dosage I should get." First question: what's ADHD? I was like, you know, just, you know, hyperactivity, like the brain just works differently. It's like, so the meds, will it be solved in 2 weeks? Because I only got dosage for 2 weeks. Like, will it be solved in 2 weeks? I was like, my brain just works differently. So his concern is, but your market value in the arranged marriage Indian ecosystem will go down. And I'm like, Dad, I have bigger fish to fry.
Dude, he's got an agenda.
He's like, you're turning 31 soon. Like, no, we were supposed to get you married. So he was despairing about this. And I'm like, oh my God, my whole life has been a lie and this is what you're focusing on.
So from where I'm standing as somebody who maybe doesn't struggle with this condition, or maybe I don't know yet.
Think?
Yeah, so I think.
At this point.
Yeah, at this point. So what are some of the coping strategies you developed naturally growing up?
The masking or the like post-diagnosis?
Pick one.
Crying in your room at night because you're not as good as everyone else and spending more time to work on things. I guess it's quite common because you think everyone's normal around me. I look like them, so I should be performing the same standard. I can't, so I'm not good enough. So you spend more time, and especially I guess starting when you first transition to work. For me, at least, right? And I just first started, the amount of emails that we had to do, the amount of paperwork to do. I'm like, I can't do this stuff. So people clock off at 6 p.m. I'm like, I can't. I'm just gonna go for a long dinner and then come back at 9 o'clock and tackle this again. So I don't know, not effective, but if I had known this then I'd just be like, oh, just lean into the executive dysfunction. At least for me now, it's just lean into it. It's just not your time. Get to it tomorrow.
Also, choosing fields where you can be sporadic with work was very, very good. So that's why research called to me, because I can just go do all my experiments a week, and then like for 6 months I can just sit and do nothing and no one will question me because the data is there. A lot of the things I tried to unlearn was, being in a pressure cooker all your life is not healthy for you. Like forcing yourself to do hard things all the time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you've clearly the diagnosis has assisted, right? How is this different, Tina, maybe for like children? Like, how did you sort of incorporate these coping strategies for?
I guess the interesting thing for children is that they do, because of age, right, have external support. So the key is, and what actually a lot of you are talking about is like getting someone or something to be your external executive function. Yeah, so like someone to organize you. So obviously for parents, if the parents can help to organize the child, it really helps. But I think the key to that is getting the child to learn those strategies, right? Because otherwise you have some children who are really well supported, and then they grow up not realizing they have issues and not realizing they need to learn how to cope with those things because the parents were just doing it for them. So you call it sort of like scaffolding. Like you have scaffolding all around them, protecting them, and like giving them all the list, all the whatever, all the reminders, and the parent is the one that's reminding. But what if the child doesn't have that kind of present parent, right? For whatever reason, even if it's just dual working or whatever. So we do actually need to equip them to actually build these skills to when they're older, right? To not, for example, wait to the last minute to do your assignment that you need a week to do, right? And then not sleep. Like this is how you break up your assignment, making it urgent, but like bringing forward your deadlines. Today you need how many? Write one chapter. Tomorrow you write the next chapter, and then or rather a paragraph for children, right? Paragraph, and then at the end of the week, for your tuition class, you can bring your completed composition, right, or something like that. Trying to like lower it down to child level. Right. And then of course, then it comes to the stage when you're an adult that you realize that okay, if I can't do it, I think I like what you said, Nigel. You sort of drop it and sort of say, I can't fight this because I really just can't do it. And if I force myself, I won't do it well. And it will also probably bring out an ugly side of me. You know what I mean? Like frustrated, resentful, whatever. And there'll be collateral damage, right? People around me. So maybe I just have to drop it totally. And people will figure out, if someone else can pick it up, or if it's something that everybody just drops, right? Especially when you have family, you have children, sometimes the stakes are higher, right? For example, if you're on a trip or on a holiday or something, and you just feel like you want to switch off, but you can't because you're a protector of the whole family, right? So I think all that can be really tough when you extrapolate from what you're teaching a child to what they need when they are older. But it's these like external things and tips and tricks kind of thing. It's not that there's no solution. I think there are, but different solutions work for different ADHD persons. And you need to find your own groove. You need to find what works for you.
So you've had the privilege of seeing your child go from 6 years old all the way to now, who is about 20 years old. How did you see these coping strategies sort of transition, and would you say some of them were more successful than the other?
For sure. I think for him, because he also battled a lot of low self-esteem, and he was trying so hard, right? So every time I suggested something, he would say, I have already tried it, but it doesn't work. And then he didn't have any other alternative, And I think he was very hard on himself, like, as in, similar to what you're saying, like, only me can find that solution, right? Like to the alloy or whatever, and like, no one else can, and not so much that you don't trust others, but it's like, if something the teacher said, I understood it the first time, then I won't be this problem, right? So obviously I can't ask any teacher for help because they will just tell me something that won't help me. So it was all like, it's on me.
Yes,
they're all nodding, right?
She's like, amen.
Yeah, correct. So it's like on me to, and you put it on yourselves. Like, I have to solve this problem, I have to learn. And that whole thing, I kept nodding because I resonate on his behalf. Like, he would work so late into the night just to write an essay, and that was his secondary school years. And then he was not happy with it at the end, and he just delete the whole thing because it was like so, but he couldn't like ask anyone or whatever, and you're like, but at that age you sort of have to let them feel their way around. So he learned through a lot of hard knocks for sure.
Question, if I could. I mean, you talked about a lot of just kind of like complementary aids to get tasks done, but how about more the self-esteem, emotional side of things? How do you? Because now I've realized my son comes and says sorry first, like it's his fault, and I'm like, oh shit, you gotta model this. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Don't say sorry. But I mean, how else can you do that better?
I think it's a learning journey. I won't say I did it really well or anything, because until now he's still sort of just coming out of, or just rebuilding his self-esteem and his confidence. We were very much like trying to affirm him and trying to focus on his strengths, but sometimes when some people are already having lower self-esteem, whatever you say to them, they will just, water off a duck's back, But then they need to realize that there's something that causes them, there are barriers that cause them to not be able to do what's right. Yeah, and I think that's a difference to realizing there's a barrier rather than realizing that internally I'm broken and there's no way I can ever do it right. And it's such a subtle difference, right? Yeah.
When I was diagnosed, I spent the first like couple of months denying the fact that I was diagnosed. Like I had to unlearn 30 years of other labels
Yeah.
that could have
Wow.
just been ADHD.
Wow.
That even like after the third time I saw the psychiatrist, I was like, "Are you sure? Like, can you just like repeat to me again why I have ADHD?" And then you also have like the side of the internet that talks about overdiagnosis and everyone has ADHD. That makes you doubt yourself so much.
It's also the whole thing, right? Like when you get diagnosed as adults, everyone looks at you either are like, oh, 100% you have ADHD, or like, I would have never imagined in my life. Because there's no in between, right? And so I had, like, it was binary, like 50-50 of my friends. One of those, I found like, oh yeah, I saw your screen like twice in my life and I don't want to see it ever again. It's 80 tabs, 5 different things, death metal playing in the background, and I'm just like writing like a paragraph on like, writing like a cold email to like a customer. This is what's happening. Like,
It's your brain on a screen, right? On the screen.
I wake up in the morning, do my bed, I get the cat hair off, I get the laundry done every week at clockwork at the same time. I eat the same thing every day so that I don't have to think about it. So it's all like, I was like, I have my life sorted. I don't forget, I have never lost my keys even after a drunk night out. Like I could have gone blind drunk, but I've never lost my wallet, my keys, or my phone ever in my life. And it is insane.
So you see, it does present quite differently.
It's so different.
Which was saying like she doesn't remember, and you're saying you'll never forget. In Singapore, where everything is fast and productivity centered, how have you sort of adjusted? How have you maybe designed your life around it so that you can still thrive despite?
I think perspective really matters. I came across this analogy that having ADHD is like having a race car with really bad brakes. So if you just figure out how to use those brakes, you actually have, in some cases, a better car than everyone else. So, yeah. I mean, if I had one wish for Singapore, I would just wish that people be more comfortable talking about things.
To hold more space and time perhaps to understand, right? And not just try and put everything in a label for a quick answer. Yeah.
I think growing up in Singapore at least is a very singular definition of success. And that becomes the issue when you realize that you're just not the same as everyone else. So to perform and to behave in the same manner that's expected of everyone else just isn't useful for you. And to be able to say there are different paths to follow and yours just isn't the same path. I think the simple recognition that exists, at least for myself, and saying that, yeah, that's okay, no one else is on this path. You're answerable only to yourself. But it takes a lot of guts to do that because it's just not as widely talked about, like you said. Yeah.
I come from a family, my mom was diagnosed with depression. So she got diagnosed when I was 15. So mental health has always been a discussion at home. So it was never like a closed book. Coming from an Indian family, it was always, but it was still stigma associated with it. So I was always scared about like ever getting depressed. So I was like, I don't want that. So when I used to always go to a psychologist, right? Like whenever life was stressful, I'd be like, hey, I'm gonna go to a therapist and I'm gonna yap. We're gonna talk for an hour. I'm gonna pay her like $200. We're gonna yap. It's all out of pocket. I make no money, but it's a goes. I'm gonna yap once a month and then hope for the best. And the thing is, it does help, right? After 3 months, when stress actually comes back, things are serious again, then you go back to your old coping mechanism. You realize that you are like, oh, it's my own weirdness, And when I went to a psychiatrist and I talked about it, and he was the one who said, you've done well in life, you're okay. You had a lot of things holding you back, and you still tried and got to where you are without knowing it, without having the resources, right? And I think that was the one which moved me most, is like knowing that. And I think the first part was grief for me. Like when I got diagnosed, the first month was grief of how I was a horrible partner to my ex, how I was a horrible boss to some of my employees and how I lashed out to them. How, like, again, the self-esteem, self-deprecation came up, and then I talked to him about it, and he again reiterated that it's not your fault. And I think the second time hearing that, I did ask about, like, CBT, which is like cognitive behavior therapy, and things like that to help me manage my symptoms, especially when I'm off my meds. So I do take meds for ADHD now to help me get through my day with the boring stuff. The fun stuff, always off meds. But anyway, right? Like it was understanding that and also talking about it. I think I've started being very vocal about my diagnosis to people, and I don't really care what they think about me. So that's the one good thing, right? If you're your worst critic, like no one else can like actually like berate you.
True,
You're like,
true.
you know what? You've
Yeah.
not heard me speak to myself. Just FYI. So, and being a founder, you also have to be very, what's the right word? Shameless. So you get rejected every day. So you get used to it, right? So you're like, you know what? If you don't like me, doors that way. I have no problems. So being willing to walk away from things.
I think that when we're talking about it, first of all, sitting here, having this, filming this, right? And of course, then with what you do, Tina, you talk about it a lot, you educate and all of that. So would you like to share some final thoughts?
No, I'd love to hear what you just said, which actually, there's a term for it. You have very strong help-seeking behavior, right? So you, before anything happened, because you didn't want to be depressed, you booked yourself and built a relationship with a psychologist. And I think that's amazing, right? I think you would have different help-seeking behaviors and mechanisms over time. And I love the fact that even talking about it actually is brings you up, it boosts you up, you know, and in a way you sort of don't care what other people think, right? The ones who have narrow-mindedness, well, unfortunately, hopefully you drop something that for the first time they will think about, right? But at least for many others, you might impact them to go, oh wow, right? Like look at him, he's so successful and he's doing all of this, and ADHD can look like that too, right? Someone who's actually seeking help, someone who's actually making good for themselves. Now, I think for my son, it's interesting because I spoke to him very early about his ADHD. So from like 7, you know, just soon after 6, like, you know, I found ways to talk to him as you would age appropriately. So he's become somewhat of a little advocate for you know, neurodivergence. In the gaming, in some of the whatever, I don't even know the names he plays, but on Discord, right? And people who know or suspect the ADHD will actually start reaching out to him and asking questions and stuff, and then he would, you know, just share about stuff. And I'm so glad, because even though he's got that terrible critic to himself, right? He also has very compassionate heart to help others. And I think I hear that out of you as well, you know, that somehow telling your story, if it's going to help someone else, why not? Right? And that's something I'm so glad to see in him, because, and just to address the fact, right, help seeking can also be, in the first place, getting the diagnosis, right? And that's something that a lot of the people in the general, and especially in Singapore, are still not getting, you know. And exactly like what you said, Rachel, the talk is there's over-diagnosis, right? Everybody's ADHD now, you know, and they're like roll eyes kind of thing. But I'm like, hello, it's not that easy to get a diagnosis, okay? By the way, okay? It's not that easy. As for your being so successful, for you to get it, it's amazing, you know, and it says something in a good way. For children, it's also not easy for them to get a diagnosis. That's why you have many who get missed out, because they were performing well in other areas. So I had to tell parents that, to tell, you know, anyone I can tell, I also do the telling on behalf of you all, that if someone bothers to go and check, or even say, I think I have ADHD, pay attention. They're asking for understanding. They're not asking, saying it as an excuse. Yeah, and that's the thing, I think it would really hurt you, right? Like people always say, don't use it as an excuse. They're not. Like for my son's example, he always said, I'm not, he never used that word, but he always said, I don't want people to treat me differently. I don't need any, like, why do you need to talk to my teachers? Because like to him, like as his own teenager, like what can they do? You know, can they tell me like not to hand in homework, or like don't go for exams? Like obviously I know I still have to, right? Which is true, right? Like it's like the no-brainer thing. You all laugh because that's true. They are so grounded in reality. They are not like airy-fairy. They are not people trying to, you know, be victimized or be helpless. And I think that's something we have to recognize of everyone around us, you know, especially as we talk a lot more about neurodiversity and even mental health struggles. I think it's really good that people can come out and say, I have depression, or I have whatever, and yet I'm running a company, right? Or I'm doing what and what. And there's really nothing wrong with that, because the worst is not to have the help-seeking behavior, right? Or to have people discredit you and say, oh, that's really nothing, right? Or stop giving excuses, you know. And I think you would know it goes nowhere because you have lived your whole life finding or blaming yourself, happy to blame yourself almost, because you have nothing else to blame, and you know you should do better as well. But then suddenly you realize, hey, I don't have to blame myself anymore, right? I do have this issue, and then I just need to learn to cope with it in a great way, and make myself flourish and do well. And I'm just amazed at all your stories.
Absolutely. And on that note, thank you guys so much. I mean, if there is a key takeaway for me, I think whether or not it is ADHD or anything else, I think as principal, a lot of times I find that sometimes when I don't want to answer people, it's because I find that what they're trying to do is just box me up in a one-word label, And what I've learned today is actually I would be willing to share and explain a lot of times to people who are open to understanding. And I think that today at least we have a space to maybe voice out and share and help foster the understanding among a lot of people. So whether for this particular topic or not, for me it's as simple as how are you still single or why? And it's a very loaded question. I'm like, how long do you have? Because you want to explain my childhood trauma to you and get into my attachment disorder, But those who are willing to listen, I think we can afford to be a lot more compassionate and understanding. So I want to thank you guys so much for sharing today as we wrap up. And I'm so enriched, and I'm also very tempted to now check because I do see some of these very prominent traits in my own life. So, but either way, thank you guys so much. And
ADHD people tend to congregate around other ADHD people. It's a very true thing.
Like my close friends might say, like Shah, who's filming, right? Like I forget my stuff all the time. I need the novelty of, which is why I'm in production, never mind. Let's talk off camera, guys.